I often get asked, what are some of the things that I could do better if I were a salesperson to actually be more effective in front of customers? And I tell people it's actually fairly simple. It boils down to three different concepts, and they actually are important sequentially. The first thing is I have to get people to listen. If people don't listen to what I want to say, if they don't want to have a conversation with me, then the likelihood that I'm ever going to engender any change in their behavior is zero. And so I have to get people to want to listen. Now, my experience tells me that there's only two reasons why people listen to us. One, they listen because we have a relationship with them, and that relationship itself carries the interest. Now, unfortunately, we don't have relationships with everybody, so maybe 25% of the time will the relationship carry the interest. The other 75% of the time, we actually have to say something that the customer or the prospect or the person we're trying to influence sees as interesting and relevant. Now, the reality is most of us can be pretty boring. I mean, I read sometime where most of us have acquired layers of boring in our adulthood. And so what we want to do is to figure out how can we be more interesting. Now, Chip and Dan Heath wrote a terrific book called Made to Stick. And in that book, they talk about how do you use mystery, surprise, and curiosity to actually get people to want to hear what we have to say. And so this is actually an art that most of us need to practice more completely. And the best way to do that is to learn the things in Made to Stick. Now, if I can get someone to listen, I still have to get them to think differently. Because the reality is, if they don't think differently, they never act differently. So the goal of all effective communication is really, how do you engender thinking on the part of the customer by asking questions that engender the kind of thought that we want to have? My experience tells me that most people do not know the architecture of a great question. And that's something that you can actually learn how to create once you understand the architecture, because there are three critical components of every question. One is intent. Why am I asking the question? The second one is content. What do I want to know? And the third thing, maybe the most important thing, is the condition. How do I preface the question so the person wants to answer and answer truthfully? So if I can get the person to listen, if I can get the person to think differently, I still have to get them to act differently. Now, how do we do that? We figure out a way to orchestrate the final conversation so that this person sees why it's in their best interest. And they're the ones telling us that this is a great idea. And once you tell me that what we've discussed is a great idea, I have every right to ask you for a commitment. So if we want to get significantly better in front of our customers, we have to learn to get them to listen, to get them to think, and to get them to act.